Now, we're going to commence today with an engaging dialogue on airports and FBOs. Now, this session will focus on ongoing infrastructure development, customer needs, and efforts to better accommodate the growing demands of business aviation as a whole. So to kick off the first session of the day, please join me in welcoming the moderator for this dialogue, Paul Desgrosseilliers. And I knew I was going to mangle that, so I'll just call you Paul D, like you said. Come on, Paul. Paul is the General Manager and Accountable Manager at ExecuJet Haite Aviation Services China, which has bases at Tianjin and Beijing Daejeon Airport. Paul is also the Treasurer of ASPA, so very well qualified to lead this topic. And thanks for the round of applause. I was going to ask you for it, but you did it on your own.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And it's good to see everybody out here at 10:30, last day of the show. It's actually a much fuller audience than what I expected, so thank you all for coming out early. All right, today we're going to discuss FBO. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. I worked in FBO for the first half of my career before I'm now running MRO. But we're engaged again in Beijing, my company, in providing FBO services. So now I've re-engaged with that sector of the industry. So we'll discuss a little bit about that today. So I'd like to welcome my esteemed colleagues and I think some veterans, real veterans of the industry. First, Mr. Hiroshi Higashiyama from Universal. He's the representative director in Japan. Mr. Chris Barrow, Director of Flight Operations, HKAB, Hong Kong Business Aviation Center. And Ms. Rita Tam, General Manager, Macau FBO, TAG Aviation. Today's session will focus on the ongoing airport expansion, modernization efforts, and how we can better accommodate the growing demands of business aviation. We'll explore the latest innovations from FBOs and that are designed to enhance passenger and crew experience with state-of-the-art facilities and services. Additionally, we'll discuss the challenges of meeting the needs of business aviation with commercial operators at some of the busy airports, I think, in Northern Asia, and then we'll bring some of that discussion and see how we can tie it in the developing market in Southeast Asia. So I think we can get into having some discussions in particular to your businesses. I think we could start with Rita. Could you please briefly describe the business and highlight some of the essential services that you provide at the Macau FBO and how we can, I guess, use those services and see how we can meet the expectations of the business aviation clients. And then I think I'd like to see if we could tie that into some of the regional differences, right? I think what you do in Macau is different, even though very close to Hong Kong, but I'm sure there's differences and much different from Japan, and maybe you can talk a little bit of how that is in other parts of North Asia, what you see in places like China and Beijing. So please go ahead, Rita.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rita. I'm representing TAG Aviation Macau right now. I think a lot of people know my background. I spent some time in Hong Kong for like 16 years after, then I joined TAG Aviation. Right now 6 years already, so don't do the calculation. Come back to the questions. I think the key essential service that to meet the customer expectation, I think right now is the facility, the state of art of the facility that can facilitate the passenger when they go to the arrival and departure. And then apart from the facility, I think the key thing is the people inside the FBO that can generate the service that can meet the customer expectation. Not only the passenger, I think it's also the operator that we can provide the efficiency and also the effectiveness for the operator, whether we can do beyond our limitation. For example, the landing permit or also the slot application as well. By the book, yes, we can apply the permit like slot for 3 days. But if there's any emergency, you guys all know about our business nature. If there's any emergency, if we can do beyond our limits, and then I think that's the key that meet the customer expectation. It's not only that you have a fancy facility, but also the people inside, we can generate the service, and I think the people inside is the key. In terms of the difference in Macau, and I think probably Hong Kong and Macau is more or less the same facility, and also the parking stand in front of the FBO. The difference between the Southeast, I do spend some time in Singapore, I think a couple of years ago. I think the difference is Hong Kong and Macau, we have a FBO, solely provide arrival and departure for all the private jet. But some of the FBO in the Southeast Asia, probably they have different handling agents, share the same the facility, the executive lounge. So I think this is the difference. Maybe Japan as well. They share they have different handling agent and share the same FBO. So I think this is the key difference between Hong Kong, Macau. I think they're more or less the same, I think, and also the Southeast Asia. Why there's always a difference between us.
Chris?
Morning, everyone. I'm Chris from Hong Kong Business Aviation Centre. So I guess Rita's kind of said the same sort of thing that I would say in terms of FBOs. Obviously, we try to provide any service that the customer needs. So I think key thing for an FBO is that we provide on-site CIQ. That's very important. The sort of efficiency for the passenger to get off the aircraft, make their way to the car as quickly as possible. I think that's the major benefit that passengers are looking for, particularly in the sort of high-end business environment. So I think CRQ and also ability to have hangarage. Hangarage is quite rare in the region, particularly for parking. There's obviously some MRO hangars around, as you obviously well know, but parking hangars is fairly limited. So I think Hong Kong is able to provide those. Of course, Macau has that as well, but I think that's the difference between Hong Kong and a lot of Southeast Asia FBOs or ground handling companies, that they maybe don't have those facilities as readily or easily available. So it's not uncommon for passengers to have to get in the car and go quite some distance to get to the CIQ, things like that. So I think for this region, as it's obviously rapidly growing, those two things for me would be something that really would be able to benefit the customer and, as you say, like the operator and things like that. So those two aspects, I would say, are the key things.
No, I guess I would agree with that. Seeing what happened in the early days, say in Beijing, where you were driving passengers over to Terminal 2, right, to do the CIQ process, having it in-house is a big advantage. Hiroshi?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Hiroshi, Higashiyama. Everybody call me Higashi. I'm representing the Universal Aviation in Japan, and the Universal Aviation is the mother company is the Universal Weather and Aviation in Houston, Texas. And the Universal Aviation have the 46 representing 46 countries and one or three maybe location we have in all over the world. And I'm only representing Japan, so I cannot say any other country, but only for Japan I want to say yes. The challenge is currently in Japan is most of the airport is organized by the government, and some is private company is government owning that. But most of the company and most of the airport is only focusing the airline. So in terms of the business aviation, the Japan is a backward country. No good, actually. We are facing right now is a lot of the manpower issue. We cannot provide handling service to the clients, and also the airport doesn't have the geo terminal. Or FBO. We don't have no FBO in Japan. In terms of FBO, only the geo terminal. Some airports they have, and as Rita says, that we cannot differentiate the service of service level handling by each handling company. So it's not easy country right now in Japan, but maybe sometime in good future, we see a lot of progress.
I think you bring up an interesting topic where if it's government driven in Japan, right, and maybe it's just GA terminals, not necessarily FBO infrastructure. I think I'd like to get into some of the differences, and maybe Chris, you could talk about, and Rita, I think both of your FBOs are more commercially driven, right? Where if you look at other places like he highlighted in Japan and what we see in China, where it's more government driven. What are some of the differences that you would see in terms of what the government may provide and say infrastructure or services, and what you would provide more as a commercially run MRO, FBO?
I guess if you consider the fact that if it's, well, I would say commercially operated, it's probably the key point there. So necessarily, obviously you still have, even for Hong Kong, we obviously have to work heavily with the authorities and government, but as the business, it's commercially driven. So that allows us to have a lot more, I guess, decisions, ideas on how we operate, ways to do things. We can listen to customers, and we have a bit more flexibility to make those changes quite easily. So I think that makes it much easier to do the day-to-day operations or run the business in a bit more of a sort of flexible way. Of course, government-driven, then you're kind of fairly tied into how you can operate. I don't think it's necessarily easy to make changes. There's a lot of approval process, hierarchy, and things like that, which makes it very, very difficult in a industry which is supposed to be very easy to accommodate the customer, very flexible and easygoing. So I think commercially is obviously a lot easier, but I can imagine that those that are working in government-based ones like Hiroshi is going to have some day-to-day struggles to try and make any simple, small changes, but those small changes are very important. So, something just very minor can make a customer's sort of life very different when going for an FBO. So, commercially, I would say just a lot more flexible and easy.
Rita?
I think Macau airport, they quite support our business aviation. Actually, our business aviation established before Hong Kong. We have our own FBO building, our small hangar next to the FBO building, and also the dedicated general aviation parking stand in 1995 when the airport opens. So I think it's one of the pioneer airports to have business aviation. And the government and the airport is quite supportive for the business aviation sector. And we have dedicated parking stand right in front of the FBO. And right now, even though the master plan, they started to reclaim the land, more parking stand, they have deserved one of the sector just for the business aviation. So I think Macau airport is very supportive for the business aviation. And a lot of requests, a lot of landing permit slot, they approve, within 2 hours maybe, if we have some kind of emergency. So yeah, I think it's, even though commercial driven, and also we also governed by ACM, the government like CAD, and they are very supportive for us.
So I guess, Higashi, how do you balance that?
Actually, the airport in Japan is, some airports in Japan is managed by private company, and most of the airport is governed by the government or local government. And some airport is very supportive, like Hokkaido, we are having a booth right now, and they are also very supportive to support business aviation, the operation in any way. But the most of the airport is not supportive. They are still thinking that the business aviation is one of the cockroach. Actually, yes. And also the one of the thing we are facing right now is the airport and the customs, immigration, quarantine is a total different organization. So once they change the schedule, we need to talk with the airport, then talk with customs, immigration, quarantine, and the others. Then if even one of them will deny the change, nobody can operate to the change the schedule. This is the issue of the Japanese government. Totally different. The organization in the mind, the change in the mind always.
I think since we're on the topic of governments, and I think we'll jump back and have a discussion about services. I got a lot of questions about services. But since we're talking about governments, let's get into the topic of advocacy, right? So, I think we're struggling now in many parts of Southeast Asia, where we have very busy airports. And I think, Chris, you went through these struggles in Hong Kong, with commercial aviation growing, and that typically is prioritized over business aviation, right? And slot arrangement and infrastructure, land availability, parking spaces. So I think we're seeing this now in many parts of Southeast Asia as business aviation grows, but commercial aviation has exploded and is prioritized, and some would say rightfully so. So how do you advocate with the governments? How do we get business aviation on the forefront and at least on the minds as there's further airport development, whether that's new or existing infrastructure? How do we do that? What do you think, Chris? I think you've had a lot of experience on the advocacy side in Hong Kong.
I guess we did a lot of lobbying with the authorities, mainly CAD in Hong Kong. I think we just kept knocking on the door and kept advising that we can help, and that was from a HKBAC point of view, and also on the ASBAR side of things as well. So just keep asking the questions, sharing the information, sharing what happens elsewhere in the world, showing how things can work, offering to be part of the working committee, offering to be able to help and make decisions with them or for them. I think slot would be probably one of the success factors, I would say, that's sort of drastically improved, because historically we had lots of slot problems in Hong Kong, some of the rota problems, so runway occupancy times, things like that. A lot of work went into dealing with the authorities on that, and a lot of the community also took part. So it was a sort of collaborative effort. It's not just us as a commercial entity, and of course we have an interest. But also for those operators who obviously have the key clients on board. So, a lot of companies came into that room also and supported it. So I think collaboration and ensuring that you all have the same goal and agenda has been successful. Of course, it's still an ongoing challenge, but I think demonstration and also we did some trials and for certain things such as let's say ground handling events, towing, things like that, then we do a period of trial. We demonstrate that we can do things in a way that the airport is happy with, and then eventually that becomes more of a full-time kind of operation. So I think collaboration and just keep knocking on that door is the only real way to kind of get that voice sort of heard. Yeah.
Rita?
Macau Airport is quite small and they are easy to talk. We always pick up the phone and talk to them on what we need, and also the CAD as well. So I think that communication is very important, mutual communication. We time to time we have meeting with them and we talk to them what we need, what we want. Even though we have the history of almost 30 years of business, but some of the facilities is outdated, but it can also mark the history of the business aviation in Macau. So especially we have been there for 6 years already, and we want to bring some new things. So I think mutual communication between the government and us is very important.
Yes, same to me. The communication with the government is a very key point for the expand the challenges. And but the Japanese government people is not tried not to talk with the handling company. And then what I'm doing is I have another title saying Vice Chairman of the Japanese Business Aviation Association. The 60 company for dedicating the business aviation is gathering that association. So I'm talking to the government officer often and do some massages to them, sometimes softly and sometimes hardly, and pushing the massage to them to know about what the business aviation is, what they need, what we need. And the person in charge of the business aviation changing every 3 years. So after 3 years, we need to do the same thing to the newcomer. This is happening always, but we need to do this gradually to to know them what the business aviation is.
Yeah, so I think the key message is utilizing associations to really massage the governments. I think that's what we can take away. I think let's get back to service. I have a laundry list of questions here in regards to service. If we have the typical business aviation client coming into your facilities, I'm sure there's regional differences to those customers, right? What a Chinese customer is probably different from somebody in Japan, right? So what are the particular things they're looking for when they enter the FBO, and what services should you prioritize if you're setting up a new FBO in this part of the world? And what are particular things? I think Chris, you mentioned earlier, maybe it's CIQ, right? This is very important to have in-house CIQ. But what specific services, with CIQ, should you look to, institute from the beginning as you set up an FBO?
I would say, obviously that's a main factor, but obviously customers are very different. So some like to be in the lounge, some prefer to go straight through, and you sort of almost don't see the end customer, which is, I would guess, the ideal situation in an FBO, that the passenger just simply passes through quickly and efficiently. Privacy, I would say, is the most recent requirement for a lot of customers, that they want to be in their own room, they don't want to maybe engage with other customers, they don't want to mix with different crowds. So I say privacy is definitely the key difference in the last few years. So at HKBAC we've sort of done a lot of efforts to sort of make segregated rooms, and then we have our upcoming projects in this year for our redevelopment project, which is coming up in July, and we've taken into account those type of privacy issues and trying to make things as streamlined as possible. So some customers, for example, might just come in the car, go straight through a private sort of channel and then straight onto the apron. So we have to facilitate that. Then also have a lounge that can facilitate those customers that wish to stay in the lounge, and then have a lot more private rooms which are able to be pre-booked for certain customers so that they can have their own space and do their own things. So I think privacy is a key point. Also, obviously the emerging trend at the moment is pet travel as well. We see a lot of dogs coming through Hong Kong. So I think those type of emerging trends need to be considered when you're building a new FBO or a new facility. So yeah, pets, privacy, and I guess just making sure that you have the highest level. And actually also seems F&B is also quite an upcoming trend that was not necessarily so important to people before, but we do get a lot of customers that are asking for more F&B options and things like that. So I think having facilities that are able to handle those emerging trends are what people need to think about when they're building new facilities in the region.
Rita?
I agree with Chris. Yeah, a lot of passengers. There are a lot of different kinds. Some people, they don't want to be seen in the FBO. They want to be separate. They don't want to be seeing each other. And some of them, they would like to relax in the lounge and have a cup of coffee, have some snacks before they get into the aircraft. On-site CIQ is very important in the FBO. Passenger disembark, go to FBO, clear the immigration, go on the car. Is the kind of efficiency that I think a lot of passengers, they want to have in the FBO is the key thing. And the privacy, as Chris mentioned, privacy is another key thing in the FBO that should have. A lot of the celebrity, they don't want to be seen. Some key passenger, they want to be separate with maybe their girlfriend and boyfriend, they want to be separated, is the key thing that FBO that they need to have.
In a universal.
Yes, of course, key should be the secrecy and the safety, and also the anytime the client needs the services, we should provide the service as much as possible. That is the key point. And also in terms of Japan, the Singapore, Macau, the Hong Kong, everybody can speak English, but Japan, still not many people can speak English. I mean, you see the movie and the Lost of Translation, that's still happening in Japan. Even in you're driving in the cab driver cannot speak. So it's not easy to her to find the English speaker for the handling stuff. And also most of the people for our guest or the client will want to talk with their mother language. So we need to hire the Chinese speaker, we need to hire English speaker, sometimes Korean, sometimes the Spanish. That is another key point to keep the service level up.
So you talk about hiring people, and I think people is probably one of the key drivers in the service industry, right? So let's talk about how you hire people, where you find people. Do you typically hire from the industry, from aviation itself, with experience, business aviation experience, without? Do you hire from hospitality? Is this? I think this is somewhat of a good source of talent, right? Bring people with that service background. Where do you look to hire these people? And then once they're in-house, how do you retain these people?
I'll let you go first, Rita.
We open for every industry because Macau is small, but our unemployment rate is really low. You only have 1.8 unemployment rate. It's hard to hire people, to be honest. So that's why we don't have any choice. We need to open to every industry. It doesn't have to be hospitality. It doesn't have to be aviation background. As long as people come, the CV, we arrange interview, we try to hire, and then, yeah, of course we have a selection process. But in Macau, it's not easy to find people, especially we have higher standard of our industry. So we keep on hiring people, but in looking for people in maybe mainland China or Southeast Asia, we hire not only mechanics people, but also in China, we're trying to look for different sectors. In Macau, we do have a university, Macau University of Tourism. They prepare the people in Macau for serving people for tourism, but not. So that's why the students, we can look for students to be hired in our industry as well. That's.
I guess I have a similar situation to Rita, but I would say it's difficult to hire to a certain extent. For Hong Kong, we have, I would say, two types of employee in general for sort of general operations, and one would be, I guess, front of house, which again, as you mentioned, hospitality, hotel type individuals are normally fairly well suited to that type of role. But on the sort of the ramp or apron side of things, there's quite a high standard for license requirement in Hong Kong, and that really does make things difficult. So most FBOs globally, you can tow an aircraft, you can do these things, but in Hong Kong you can't unless you have essentially a heavy goods vehicle license, which doesn't really make much sense. But that means that the pool for those type of people is very, very different to the front of house customer service type of people. So normally there's a customer service person generally in Hong Kong doesn't have a driver's license, for one, just because the public sort of traffic system is so good, so they don't need to drive really in Hong Kong. So normally those people can't drive, and on the people that can drive, where they have a license, normally maybe a little bit less customer service orientated type of individual. So we basically have two different types of pool of people. Both are quite difficult to hire. I would say retention rate that we have is fairly good. So I think once we have a lot of staff, I think anyone that's been through BAC we generally see the same faces most of the time, but of course we do have some changes. Of course in Hong Kong we don't have any other FBO, so we're generally going to be hiring people that have got a non-business aviation background. And I would say for most of the operation roles that's okay. And then I guess if you think of like maybe managerial level, then sometimes that can be a little bit difficult to find, because we're trying to have people that really understand, the customer needs and things like that. So that sometimes that can be the area where we struggle. So three things are the three types of problems. Actually, they're all problems really. So it's difficult, but once we keep them, we try to I guess pay them fairly. It's easier to think than say that. And also try and provide, good work conditions for them, relatively good shift patterns, things like that, different allowances that can help them to come to effectively a fairly remote location. So I think we do quite well in keeping staff, but certainly to find a very high standard of staff is quite difficult because of those different challenges.
I think the same as two of you. The Japan is also not easy to find that good candidate to be coming to the business aviation. Honestly speaking, business aviation is not known to general in public in Japan. So sometimes they see the video or the TV show on the business jet, but that's all. They never know about what the business aviation is. So we should advertise what should be, but maybe that's our bad thing. But we need to. It's not easy to find a good candidate for knowing about business aviation or and we hire for the airline oriented person, but they are not fit with business aviation because business aviation change the schedule a lot, but the commercial airline keep the same schedule always, so they cannot understand why business aviation change a lot of schedule. So their mind a bit different from us. That's one thing. And we're talking about the aviation school. Even in the aviation school in Japan, it's only focusing for the airline. So they're teaching about the flight attendant and the maintenance or operation. That's all. Most of they oriented to the airline, not for the business aviation. That is another issue we have, and also the language barrier will be the good point to consider about this.
Yeah, I think you bring up an interesting point, and I think this is something I know within ASBO we have a lot of discussions about, and how we can utilize that discovery program, right? Because we need to introduce students to business aviation at an early stage. I think everybody, even the few aviation schools that there are, it's typically driven for commercial aviation, and then people maybe military aviation, but nobody knows about the intricacies of general aviation and our part in business aviation, right? So I think it would improve all of our hiring situations and the multitude of roles in aviation if we had business aviation curriculum at universities. And in Hong Kong, are they doing that now?
They had some courses at HKU, I think it was, but not so much. And even for the Hong Kong airport, they have an academy. They do some courses which are relative to business aviation, but I would say not a great deal. And typically people still don't really know about business aviation, as Hiroshi said. People just assume the only jobs are a cabin crew, an engineer, or pilot. Or even for me, when I tell people I work in business aviation, they're like, "Oh, are you a pilot?" And I'm like, "No." "You an engineer?" "No." And that's all they know. And then they're like, what else could there be? I'm like, well, there's so many other jobs, but I guess it's a bit of a chicken and egg. We need some traction. It's very difficult to get there. I know with the Discovery program, that was something that from an ASBAR perspective was going quite well, but I think we just need to keep trying to introduce those courses in different regions. Maybe in China, for example, or other countries that have got a much bigger pool of people. Maybe that's better. Even in Hong Kong, it's quite Macau's even smaller. So there's a small pool of people. So it's all very well we set up a lot of courses, but actually the attendance rate would be very, very low. So maybe in China it could be somewhere, because it's such a vast country. Thailand, other places maybe also. So, or even Singapore might be quite challenging to find enough people to fulfill the university's need to put that course on. So I guess it's driven by the demand of people that can actually attend that. So I guess we just have to keep lobbying, the industry. It's obviously a very good industry. I think most people who are in this industry stay in this industry for a very long time. So it's just, I think it's a very much chicken and egg situation that's difficult to solve.
In Macau, we don't have any aviation course in any universities. As I said, we have Macau University of Tourism. A lot of courses are related to hospitality, the hotels and services. We don't have any. Some of our staff they have their aviation degree probably overseas, so we don't have any. We try to promote in the aviation. Normally Australia. And we try to promote in one of the university. We have some talks when we have the Expo, when we have the Macau Air Show in November. We did some talks in the university, but trying to promote our sector. So right now, so far, we don't have any so far in Macau.
In Japan, it's the same. Actually, I told you the business aviation, the general aviation is not big industry in Japan. So, but thinking about all the Asia, the business aviation, general aviation is so expanding a lot right now, and I remember that the 4 or 5 years ago, the ASBAR trying to contact with each the school in the Asian region to have a curriculum for the business aviation. I think this is a good idea for in case of Japan, we need to hear or we need to feel the breeze from the all over Asia and all about the general aviation from the other countries. So and this is good idea to do it more to that's kind of ASBA or the NBW is fine. These association will do some curriculum to learn more about business aviation in some school over the Asia.
Yeah, look, I think you're right. I think all of you, I think we need to advocate. And I think that we're committed, certainly on the ASBA side. I think everybody is committed to participate. We all, actively communicate on the ASBA side, but we will be expanding the Discovery program because we all think this is important for the industry on the long term. So I think, again, we'll shift gears here now, and we'll talk about, I think, one of the bigger, the elephant in the room. Let's talk a little bit about pricing. So I think pricing across the region does differ, right? But I think relative to those that have experience either operating or working in more developed markets in North America or Europe, the pricing in Asia is significantly more expensive. So I guess there's certainly drivers for that, right? I don't think anybody up here is printing money. But I think if you could kind of talk a little bit about pricing and how you balance that, right? We all run businesses, right? So we need to balance pricing and profitability. So how do you do that? Because these airports that each of you operate your businesses are very expensive airports, right? And there's a lot of cost drivers behind it, and I think that accelerates some of the pricing. So how do you balance that? How do you work within that, Chris?
Yeah, I knew you'd come to me first. Obviously, I think you mentioned cost is the key driver for pricing. You know, the infrastructure at the airport and things like that is very, very expensive. Building cost is very, very expensive. Staff cost very, very expensive, and all of these things, you know, driven sort of push prices up. And then of course, I'll say mainly, you know, government rates. I think for anyone in, you know, in the region is largely driven by the rates that they get charged by the government in whichever form that they that applies to that individual country or FBO. So obviously the mechanism is different in each country, but essentially you know, the cost is the main factor, and then on top of that you also need to be a commercial entity. So that cost on top of already high costs creates this maybe as a higher cost maybe compared to other regions in the world. You know, but everything's, you know, relatively new. There's lots of infrastructure being put in place, so it's not like you know, it's high cost, but then, you know, everything's very, very old, and, you know, things are good and in place. But I think also security would be one key part. You know, security. So if you talk about balance of cost, you know, particularly in Hong Kong, and I would say it's probably very similar in Macau, and even in Japan, that, you know, nobody can get to your aircraft once it's in that facility. You know, there's you know, it's a very, very safe place for you to park your asset and things like that. So whilst yes, the cost drives prices higher, I think the service level, the safety level, and security level, I would say in most FBOs, not necessarily just Hong Kong, but most FBOs in the region, you're probably getting a very high level of service at the same time. So, you know, that does also come at a cost. So unfortunately, it's a little bit different. Maybe if you look at maybe more US-based models, then either they can charge for parking, which enables them to reduce a handling cost, or they're solely focused on fueling, which means all of the other services are free. In most Asian countries, then it's very difficult for you to either own the land to then be able to subsidize that, or to own any part of the you know, the flow of where those costs are coming from. So I think that's the main difference between here and for example, say US or Europe, where they're able to do a different business model. Most things in, you know, you're paying for every part of it along the way, and accordingly for that we would normally be subject to the government charges for each of those parts, and then there's obviously a commercial part on top of that.
In terms of pricing, we are very cautious on our pricing because we have competition, we have competitors, especially that competitor has been there for over 2 decades. So when we set up our FBO in 2019, we didn't start the price war. We didn't set the price very low to attract the customer at the very beginning. I think when we set the price at the beginning, we were very cautious because, as Chris said, we have high cost of the airport costs, security, and all that. I think we are reasonable. We are slightly, when we set the price, we are slightly, you know, a little bit lower than our competitor when we start. I think it's reasonable because we are new there. So in order to attract them to use us, at least they come to our FBO and taste our service. I think that's at least is reasonable to lower a little bit. But in terms of surviving and profitability, and we still need to pay for the rent, we still need to pay for our high cost of the staff salary, especially in Macau. You know, a lot of competition in the how to, you know, to the people. So is due to our competitive, even though after 6 years of operation, we're still very cautious because, you know, once they are our customer, if the customer are cost-driven, so it's very easy to lose the customer. So, yeah, but we still need to maintain our service standard. So, in terms of, it's a very long topic to discuss in terms of pricing. Especially if we have a competition.
In terms of the cost, the Japan is well known as a high cost country. Everything high, everything high. So I'm amazing that I can live in Tokyo. It's just amazing still. I don't have a money, but even something doing the price is raising up every day. It's not good. So the for the company wide, now we need to save the cost. But if we save the cost, the service level will be down, or we cannot meet the expectations for the clients. The only way we do right now is to watch the each cost carefully and find out that any place we can cut them. Now we need to keep some costs remaining. We think about that each cost be carefully reviewed. That's what I'm doing right now. And thanks for the yen rate. Currently is so weak. Actually, it's coming to the 40% lower than 2019 right now, and that makes the company or the operator coming from overseas, they feel like it's some discounted, because of the yen rate is weak. That must be the help for me right now. Yeah, trying to do possible, but some charms it's not easy to do this.
So, Rita, I think you raised an interesting topic, because I think for many operators that I talk to, they would cite that it's the lack, or, that the airports typically there's a monopoly situation and there's only one FBO. But I think you raised the point that there are two in Macau, right?
Yes.
And it's competitive there. Yeah. Did that drive down pricing at all? I don't think you're saying that it didn't, right?
No, we did it when we first get into the industry, get into the Macau airports 6 years ago, because for us to get in, we need to grab the customer that at least they go into our facility to taste our service. That's our strategy at the very beginning. But by then, right now, we're trying to impress our customer by using our services. So that's why most of them, they are thinking they spend the money for value. In terms of what they are receiving. When they go up to our facility, it is so different, and also when they come to our FBO, is so different. So right now, even though we are more or less the price is, we wouldn't say is much different, but I think when the customer use us, I think they will say, it's really value for what they receive.
Okay, I think we're getting close to the end here. So I think let's see if we look towards the future, right? And I think there's many opportunities for FBO development in Southeast Asia. I think we can all identify a lot of cities that need the FBO infrastructure. The fleet is expanding 6% across Southeast Asia itself, and 15% in Singapore. You get 8% in Indonesia. There's just many countries, and the demand is going to it's already there, right, for this FBO infrastructure. If you look at your individual situations, what kind of advice can you give to those in the region as they now start discussing with the governments and looking for land and looking for infrastructure and how they set up? So what areas could you identify? Are there particular airports themselves that we could look at where there's the immediate need, and how do we structure those arrangements looking forward?
Well, I think success stories would be places like Hong Kong and Macau. As Rita said, the Macau FBO was there when it was built. The Hong Kong Business Aviation Center was there when it was built. And I think you have to have the company who's willing to invest has to be there at the beginning. Waiting to have an airport built and then run in and then say, I want to have an FBO operating here, typically is going to be difficult to achieve. And I guess in Japan, that's probably the case is that they're all existing infrastructure. So success stories are normally based on when it's a brand new airport and somebody or the company having the vision that they can see that the demand in the country, I think obviously it's not just the business, it's the country economy, that it's going to grow, and to be able to, I guess, take the risk, essentially. So, obviously, for our company, it's a very long time ago, and when they started the process, and then took a very, very long time to be able to become maybe even a profitable company. So I think the company has to have an appetite for this, and also, look at the longer picture, the bigger picture, because initially it's not going to be a very quick return on investment, to be honest. So, depending on which country, I assume some countries in Southeast Asia are a lot cheaper to build than Hong Kong and Macau, for example. But it's going to be heavy investment. If you're going to do it well, do it properly, and you have an FBO, you have a hangar, and things like that, then it's going to take a lot of upfront capital, which is perhaps a little bit difficult, particularly after COVID. There's a lot of people a bit nervous. They're not too sure if something like that would ever happen again. So I think if people wait, then nothing will happen. Essentially, the airport will be built, and then it'd be too late, and then there'd be aircraft movement and no infrastructure to support it. And then you're just looking at what spare land is available, how do we connect to things, and typically that's going to end in maybe a very inefficient FBO. So the success stories, I think you could replicate those, particularly before the airport or that new infrastructure is being built.
Yeah. Apart from that, I think government and airport support is very important. You need to communicate with the government side what you want to build, what you want to do. I think mutual communication is very important if you want to set a new FBO in whatever airport. I think the last is if you want to build a new FBO, I think the infrastructure and also the connection between the commercial and also the transportation, I think is also important as well.
For Japan, is the key place is Tokyo. The one airport we have in Haneda, that is all come to the complete full from in the very near future. So even in the business aviation may not be able to arrive or depart from there. Everybody have some seriously think about the risk about that. So we're talking about the third airport around in Tokyo, but it's not impossible right now. But we keep talking about that. And one of the things is the Chris says that we need to utilize the current the facility. So one of the good things is the Narita is now planning to have a FBO on 2035, and they will change all the terminal. They change all the change the old terminal and make it one places and building a new FBO. They say this is FBO, with the new ramp for the business aviation. That is another good good challenge for them. And also, like we're doing the good deal with the Hokkaido in the RJCC. They are so effective for supporting the business aviation. I think that this kind of airports should be expanded in very near future in all over the Japan.
Well, thank you. I think we've reached the end. I really enjoyed the discussion. I think we covered a lot of different topics. So thank you all. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you all for coming this morning.